I had one class where we were given like 3 days to study for the midterm. The entire semester, people would come up to the professor and say, hey, I want to start studying. I know the midterm's coming up soon, so I like can, and you'd say, don't worry about it. It's fine. You'll do fine on it. Yeah. And then a bunch of the class did terribly on the midterm because we had 3 days, and he was kind of frustrated with like the with how we did on the midterm, and I think it was just kind of like this disconnect of like perhaps he wanted us to be going over the material on like a weekly basis or something like that, but we just didn't like have whole lot of direction on what we were supposed to do. So really just having like something that would have been nice was just like a clear expectation of like, this is how you want to practice, this is how you want to study, this is kind of what you want to these are the kind of the things that you might want to look for. I also had another class that was similar where it was a paper, and most of the class didn't do so great on it, and the professor was also frustrated. But professor didn't really like. It took him like half the semester to explain to us what he wanted in his paper, and like by that point we had turned in like 2 or 3 papers, and so and like it was just kind of like this. It was kind of challenging. So yeah, I mean just like keeping your expectations in check, and kind of like also like, is it making sense to the class? Like if you're talking with students, if students come to your office hours, and like you can ask them like how do you interpret my expectations or something like that. I mean that might get you some initial feedback, so that you can kind of save yourself that embarrassment of when the grades come down, and most of the class doesn't do well, then you kind of either you see it coming or you don't.
I had a professor who taught us in a very harsh way, ended up failing half the class in the midterm. As it was a design exam, and then he said, doesn't matter how all of your work is right, if your final design doesn't work, then you failed the problem. Because at the end, you have to deliver a project. If you're going to be at work, your your neck is on the line, like people's lives are at stake. Then he was teaching us it's not always about the work. It sometimes having that 0.1% to get the right answer is meaningful. And I never forgot it, to be honest. I think all of my peers at that class still talk about it. And at the end, he was nice enough not to let it affect our grades very harshly, but it was a very hard lesson. Like, we were all very scared when the grades were coming out.
I'd say this was last year in Contemporary Civilizations, which is another core requirement for the sophomore year. You read a lot. I don't know what we were doing. It was probably 300 pages a week about. And then for an undergraduate, I mean, for me, that was a lot. And I tried my best. I know my whole class tried our best to read everything. But towards the end of the end of the year, we had a feminist section, or so we read 3 texts, short texts by prominent feminist authors. One of whom was Kimberly Crenshaw on intersectionality. She was one of the only women we read, and one of the 5 authors of color that we read. And I know the professor meant well when she did this, but she tried to take Kimberly Crenshaw off of the syllabus because she wanted to lighten our reading load. Which to her might have come across as, oh, I want to lighten the reading load. But to me, I was like, we had to read 300 pages on Hannah Arendt's totalitarian, that I didn't want to read that. I wanted to read Crenshaw. So I ended up kind of it was a little bit of a argument one-on-one in class, which I was fine with, but we ended up getting it back on the syllabus. And I felt a little bit targeted after that interaction. But all I was trying to do again was trying to make it an even playing field for the rest of the students to be able to read Kimberly Crenshaw. But I do think, yeah, there was definitely an expectation that she, again, may have totally meant to make it easier for us students to not have read as much. But flipped it, and it was the back and forth was a little one-sided of, oh, Riley's this, angry student who is coming at my neck for no reason. So,
No pressure, but I've had mostly good experiences, so.